What's up guys, Sal here. So for the very first time, Huawei managed to surpass Samsung for the most number of smartphones sold worldwide in a particular quarter, thereby claiming the title of the world's biggest smartphone vendor. If you remember, Huawei did manage to beat Samsung in the month of April, but it's the first time ever that they are at the top for the entire quarter. Huawei shipped 55.8 million devices, whereas Samsung shipped 53.7 million smartphones in quarter 2. For Samsung, that's a decrease of 30% compared to Q2 of 2019. Absolutely no one would have predicted this would happen just a few months ago, but to everyone's surprise, Huawei actually did what they said they would do a year ago. But this reign from Huawei isn't expected to last for long because in the first place, they managed to beat Samsung only because of the pandemic. You see, Huawei's main market is China, which contributes to over 70% of its business. Given how China was the first to end up in this COVID mess, it's also the first country to experience the recovery. When cases were being spiked in countries like the United States, Europe, and India, which by the way are Samsung's main markets, there were very minimal cases in China and the economy was back to normal. Since Samsung has less than 1% market share in China, this gave Huawei a huge advantage because its reliance on the China market has given them a big and you can say an unfair advantage. Even the senior analyst at Canalys who compiled this report says the same thing, and I quote, "If it wasn't for COVID, it wouldn't have happened. Huawei has taken full advantage of the Chinese economy recovery to reignite its smartphone business. Since the economy is getting back to normal in Samsung's main markets, they'll more likely reclaim the #1 spot in quarter 3 of this year." It looks like the end of Bixby is near. Bloomberg reports that Samsung and Google are in a discussion for a deal that involves promoting the Google Assistant and the Play Store over Samsung's own alternatives, which are Bixby and Galaxy Store. Samsung has built an ecosystem of its own on top of Android and Google. This ecosystem covers apps like web browser and email clients, the Galaxy Store for apps, and the Bixby Assistant. Since Samsung sells the most smartphones in a year, shipping over 300 million units every single year, Google certainly stands to benefit a lot from this massive scale. Since Samsung invested quite a lot of money into building this ecosystem, it will take them some convincing this time. Google has a multi-billion-dollar agreement with Apple to be the default search provider in the Safari browser. So we can expect a similar deal with Samsung as well, where Google pays certain $1 billion to Samsung for certain years to push Assistant and Play Store over Bixby and Galaxy Store. This is certainly great news for people who are annoyed with Bixby as it's inferior to the Google Assistant. But Galaxy Store features some exclusive apps and games that are not available on the Play Store. So this means Samsung users will not have that exclusivity anymore. Anyway, let me know what you think about this down in the comments, and as always, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.